Hi Spencer, how are you?
I'm very well, thanks. Sen, how are you doing today?
Really good, thank you. Thanks for agreeing to do another one of these with me. I know I said after the last one we did on managing stress that I'd be taking you up on your offer again. So here we are. Um, Today I wanted to talk to you about something which isn't only topical at the moment, but also a general mantra that we talk about a lot at EMG. And it's this idea of pushing yourself out of your comfort zone in order to achieve success. And the reason that I say it's quite topical at the moment is because with the current situation where a lot of people are facing uncertainty, lack of routine, or new routines being forced on them, we're almost having to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And I guess you often talk about pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. I guess what I'm really, really keen to understand, Spencer, is where does that come from and why is it so important to you?
Yeah, so for me, I think I look at my comfort zone as driving down the motorway. If you're driving hour upon hour upon hour on a motorway, you don't really have to challenge yourself. You know, you've done it countless times, so you know exactly what you're doing. But all of a sudden, if you get a flat tyre, that may not have happened to you before. You have to think differently and you have to react to it. So you're out of your comfort zone. So it's all about how well you know something. And you know, if you're driving your car hour after hour, you're not learning anything new. You're just doing what you already know. If you want to get better at driving your car, you have to go on an intensive driving course, for example. That's when you start learning new stuff. And when you start learning new stuff, you're generally going to get better and better at it. And the better you get, that's when you're going to become the gold medal winner that we talk about at EMG. So for me, it's always about trying to push yourself out of that comfort zone, learn some new skills and become better at what I'm doing. And the more often I do that, the bigger my comfort zone gets because I've got more and more experience in doing those things. So then I have to push myself again and it constantly evolves like that.
That's a really good way of explaining it. Can you maybe give us a specific example of when you have pushed yourself out of your comfort zone and how that has resulted in something really positive for you?
Yeah, of course. So yeah, the obvious one and the biggest one is probably starting EMG. So you know, I left a really comfortable job, really well-paid, secure job that I could do literally with my eyes shut, a bit like driving down the motorway hour after hour. And I could do it very well, but I wasn't learning new skills. I wasn't challenging myself. I wasn't pushing myself. And I wanted to be, from a personal point, you forget the company for the moment, from a personal point, I wanted to be pushing myself. I wanted to be challenging myself. I wanted to be getting better. And so setting up EMG was a really, you know, I couldn't have gone much further out of my comfort zone. I'd never run my own business before I left my you know, employed role. So it was a big gamble. It was nervous, or nerve-wracking. It was really quite tough. But I'm now in my comfort zone again. I can run a company. I know how to do it. We've grown every year for the last 8 years. So I'm in my comfort zone. So I have to look for new ways to push me out of my comfort zone.
Really good example. And I'm assuming, and I could be wrong, but I'm assuming that the reason you feel so strongly about this is because perhaps you learned from a past mistake. Was there a time where you didn't push yourself out of your comfort zone and instead decided to stay comfortable that perhaps you regret?
Well, firstly, I don't have regrets. I think everything in life happens for a reason. There was an event that made me think that a long time ago, and I do think everything happens for a reason. But yeah, I've certainly changed the way I think about my comfort zone and the way I act. So throughout school and university and my earlier life, I didn't tend to push myself. And I recently found out I was dyslexic, and I think that's probably played a big part in it. I didn't realise at the time, but there was a lot of stuff that I didn't understand at school, and rather than fearing that I would make a fool of myself by getting it wrong, I tended to take the option that, well, if I don't try, I can't fail. So there was a lot of things I didn't really push myself in so that I couldn't fail. So I could always say, I remember for my GCSEs doing about 20 minutes revision, thinking, well, if I fail, I can say I didn't work for them. And if I do well, I can just say I'm really clever. So that was the sort of the mentality I took. And I think it was a lot to do with also not finding something I was massively passionate about. And when I did, and I started pushing myself out of my comfort zone and learning and getting better, I realised it became quite addictive. And I like the results I get when I do things well. And so I like to keep pushing myself out of my comfort zone because I've become addicted to it, you could say, or obsessed by it, because I like the end results of it.
That's a really good point, because I think if you think about it, the times where we push ourselves out of our comfort zones is when we truly want to achieve something because we're passionate about it or we really care about it. Whereas if we don't really, I think it's a good indicator as to when you're sometimes like, why can't I push myself? Why can't I just be okay with it? It's probably because
Yeah.
you're not that passionate about it, or it's not the right route for you to take, I guess.
I think people tend to come out of their comfort zones. I was shown a picture of it once where you got the comfort zone. People either pull themselves out of it by things they're passionate about because they really want to do well or do something different, or they're pulled out of it the other way because maybe they lose their job, so they then have to start going for interviews again, which is really out of their comfort zone because they don't do it very often and they don't enjoy doing it. So you can be pulled out of it, or you can pull yourself out of it. It depends which way you go.
Yeah, really interesting. So with the current situation then, we are slowly getting into the rhythm of things when it comes to working from home. For me anyway, I've never worked from home before, so I am slowly getting kind of comfortable with how it works. And it will, I guess, become the new norm for a lot of people soon. But for now, it is still a bit uncomfortable, not quite there yet for me anyway. And I know a lot of people feel like that as well. But what's your advice for businesses in ensuring that their staff are doing okay and are as comfortable as they can be when it comes to work, and therefore achieving what they should be achieving?
We're in our 6th week now of working from home. We went into lockdown a little bit earlier because we had a corona virus case in the office. So we took that issue, or suspected at the time, and it turned out to be. So we took that decision for the safety and well-being of all of the staff, and also not spreading it around London. For me, the first week or two was a bit of a challenge. It was out of the comfort zone because, as you say, it's not something we regularly do at EMG at all. But once I got myself set up, and I'm pretty well settled here, there weren't really any big challenges for me. But I stuck to my same routine that I'd had in the office. I'm just doing it in a different environment. So for me, it's just like, over the years we've moved offices as we've grown, and that's a different environment. It takes you a little while to get used to it. But it's not a big issue, I don't think, for me personally. The issue has been that the isolation, or the lockdown, the fact you can't go out and see people and go for dinner or go to restaurants or go to pubs for meetings or to see people. So that for me has been the challenge rather than the actual working from home. The working from home for me is just a different environment. You take your routine and you do the same routine, and there's not really been any issues there. It's the lockdown. I think none of us have ever had this. It's like, they put you into isolation in prisons if you're behaving badly. It's a punishment, and we're all being punished for the greater good of the human race. But it is a punishment, and it's something that not many people are used to doing. So that's the challenge. But as we've been saying at EMG, we are one day closer.
Exactly.
That's the way to look at it.
I think it's a positive way of looking at it, and I think it gives everyone quite a bit of hope. In terms of then how businesses cope with that, though, so going back to the question, what advice would you give to businesses in particular who perhaps have employees that are still not necessarily in the rhythm of things, they're still quiet, down and feeling isolated all the time, in terms of motivating them? Perhaps you can give some examples in terms of what we've been doing in the business so far with the welfare team, etc.
Yeah, of course. And as I say, everyone's different, so everyone will have their own different ways of dealing with this. So I think it's important that you take lots of different ideas to try and help with this, rather than just one, because what works for me isn't going to work for someone else. Some people might be in a house on their own, some people might be in a house with lots of other people, some people might quite like being on their own, some are going to be more extrovert and want to spend time with other people. So it needs to be a combination of different things. And what we've done at EMG is exactly that, a combination of things. So we've increased our daily huddles within the teams and departments. So rather than having one 15-minute huddle a day, they're having 3 of those. We've put in the welfare committee to make sure that everyone is getting an individual phone call twice a week to keep in touch with people. We make sure that everyone has their videos on when they're doing calls, so you still get that interaction there. We've done social events, so we've had quiz nights, we've had drinks, we've got cocktail making tomorrow night. So we've done lots of things like that. So I've been sending out a video talking about comfort zones. I've been sending out a video every evening, and when we first started this 6 weeks ago, it was one of my real pet hates that I didn't like doing videos, and I'm still not a huge fan, but I definitely feel that I'm more in my comfort zone doing them now, because I've done however many I've done of them, 60 odd videos, I guess, or whatever it is in that time.
Yeah. Awesome. I wanted to talk to you about failure because I think it connects really closely with comfort zones, because often I think you could argue that the reason people don't push themselves out of their comfort zones is because they're worried about failure, right? Do you agree with the mantra that we should fail a lot but fail quickly?
No, in a way. So I think it's a mindset thing. If you use the word failure, you're framing it that it's a bad thing straight away. Now, one of my favourite quotes, and I've it pinned on my Twitter account, is by Nelson Mandela, and he says, "I never lose, I either win or learn." So I don't think it's about failing, I think it's about learning. So, depending, you can word it however you want, it means the same thing. But if you take that mindset that I'm not failing, I'm learning, if you make the same mistake over and over again, then you're failing. If you make a mistake and learn from it and try something different, that's a positive. So it's just that positive and negative mindset. It's the pint half full or half empty. If it's half empty, in my mind, you're failing. If it's half full, you're learning some new skills. I've made so many mistakes over the years, but I've learned from them, and therefore I don't try to make those same mistakes again. Just sometimes you have to make them a few times to learn. Other times you do it once and you think, I'm never doing that again, but you learn from it. So the key thing for me is about what the learning you take out of it.
There are a lot of people, as we mentioned, who don't want to go out of their comfort zones because they don't want to make mistakes. They don't want to fail because they don't want to look bad to others and perhaps not let themselves or other people down. So what advice would you give to those individuals in particular?
Well, to those individuals, I say, if that's the life you want, then that's perfectly fine for you. It's, like we say when we're doing our values interviews, your values are your values, mine are mine. There's no wrong or right. They're both, yours are right for you and mine are right for me. If they're aligned, you'll get on well with each other. If they're not aligned, you won't get on so well with each other. If you don't want to be a gold medal winner and you want to have a nice, easy life and enjoy it and not push yourself and never feel stressed because you're out of your comfort zone, then keep doing exactly what you're doing because that works for you. But for me, that would drive me absolutely mad. I want to constantly be getting better. I want to improve all the time. So if you want to improve all the time, you've got to push yourself out of your comfort zone. And it's all about perception. I remember going back to my last business again. We had some investors, and I remember getting invited to a drinks to celebrate the investors' company's one of their I think it's their first birthday of their business. And so I turned up to the event dressed not dissimilar to I am now, my sort of standard work uniform, shirt and jumper. And I turned up and I was the only one there not wearing a suit and tie. Now I could feel, the pressure, and I was sweat dripping off me, and I'm thinking, oh Christ, I look like, this guy's just invested in my business, and I've turned up like this. And I was really out of my comfort zone because I was with a load of really what I classed as senior important people that were really important to my business, and it was an environment I wasn't used to. And the first person that came up to me said, he was chatting to me and he was asking what I do, and he said, well, you must be really happy and comfortable in what you do. And I said, why do you say that? And he said, well, you're so relaxed, you're so comfortable in the way you dress, And he just took it that I didn't, I personally didn't feel I had to dress up smart to be at an event like that because I was so comfortable with myself. Whereas there's me internally thinking, I look like a right idiot here. So a lot of the time, you're worrying about mistakes that other people don't even think are mistakes. They actually might think it's a good thing. So don't worry about beating yourself up about it. Just try it. And if it works, great. If it doesn't work, you've learned. I learned to always think about the occasion and dress appropriately after that. And sometimes I might still go to an event that was like that, dress like this, because I'm comfortable like that. But I've made the decision to do that. It's not a mistake to do that. That's the difference. You've got to you've got to make a conscious decision what you're going to do and then stick with it.
I like the idea of perception, though. That is a really good point. As always, Spencer, this has been a pleasure. I feel like I've learned something new. Every time we do these, basically, I feel like I learned something new, even though we've been working together for 2.5 years now. So thank you for taking the time to do this again, because I know it is getting out of your comfort zone, isn't it?
Less so now, I must admit. We'll have to think of something new to push me further.
Yeah, definitely.
Maybe a live one, that would definitely
be. Yeah, exactly, a live one. And thank you to anyone who has watched us as well. We hope you learned as much as I did. And until next time, Spencer.
Thank you very much, Sim. One day closer.
One day closer.